Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Ask a STEM Star. With me here, your host, Ami Bakare, and we also have the wonderful Prix Berry with us, who's my friend. Spoiler alert. Um, Thank you so much for joining us this week, Prix. How are you today?
I'm good. How are things going for you?
Uh, it's going well, thanks. Um, So we will just jump right into it and get into some of these questions just because you do have a unique background that I really want us to kind of highlight. And I think a lot of young people could benefit from learning about what you've done and how you've kind of gotten to where you are. So we'll start with obviously the title of this is How Did a Poli Sci Major End Up in IT? So I'll just ask, how did you choose your college major? And what was college like for you in that field?
So, I actually, from the moment I was about 12 or 13 years old, I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. And as I was researching some of the top majors entering into law school, I found political science or government was a top major. And with that, I declared my major as government. And as I was navigating through that process, my steer focus was law school, becoming a lawyer. So when I entered my university, my first semester, I focused on my schoolwork. Later on, I decided to join moot court, Model UN, and different activities so I can have that college lifestyle. But for the most part, I stuck my head in the books and just tried to have the end light of attending law school.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's an interesting path. And I think, yeah, poli sci that does like line up with like trying to be a lawyer. Um, but so from your bio, we also saw that you also attended graduate school. So how did you decide that you wanted to attend graduate school? And then kind of just tell us about those experiences.
So interesting story with attending and deciding on grad school. I participated in study abroad. Most of my career as an undergrad, I studied abroad in Europe, Canada, Middle East,
Wow.
and what it came down to, it was a month before graduation, and I realized from a self reflection after I had just finished my study abroad to Canada that going to law school wasn't for me. It was for my family. Because you know your family, they kind of want you to become a CEO, a doctor, a lawyer, and so forth. And I realized my passion wasn't with law. My passion was international relations, specifically human rights, civil rights, and civil conflict. So I decided at that last moment I wanted to go to grad school, but it was April and I was a month away from graduating, and I knew I wanted to attend in the fall. So I had to take my GRE. I had to send out applications, and at that
Oh,
point,
wow.
the schools were their deadline was in January.
Yeah.
I decided to stay local, and just so I wouldn't have a gap year to go ahead and stay local and attend grad school that fall. And it was a very rewarding experience. Like I said, it was a self-reflecting moment that it wasn't law school wasn't for me. I didn't have a passion. It was for my family. And that's kind of how I made that decision to attend law school, or attend grad school.
Okay. And then what did you study in grad school?
So I studied government, which political science and government are interchangeable. What
Okay.
you will find if an institution was established before the 1970s, they're considered Department of Political Science or Department um, that happens before the 1970s. If it was built after the 70s, it's called Department of Government. So I have a bachelor's degree in political science, but a master's in government. They're both interchangeable, but it just depends on when the institution was founded. It was a very interesting experience. Um, like I said, I stayed local, but with that, I brought with me my UN experience, and I was able to navigate through the waters of grad school at a new institution. And at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. I'm very glad I got my master's degree in government, not political science. And I'm very thankful for it.
Well, that's awesome. So the question that we're all wondering is, how did a person with a poli sci or government type of background, um, how did you end up in an IT role? And then if you could also tell us about what that first IT role was.
Sure, sure. I actually, when I moved to Tyler, Texas, is where I moved to attend grad school. I needed a job, and there was a job. I used to work for a grocery store in retail, and I decided I did not want to move into retail when I moved to Tyler. So there was an opening at the cable company. They had several openings at the cable company, and actually, my first role was in tech support. So to get
Okay.
in the door, I I interviewed and I was brought on as a tech support agent. And back then we actually did true IT diagnostic work. By having my foot in the door, I was able to move on to a data analyst and business operation analyst role. Within a few months, I was climbing the corporate ladder. What I was able to take with me from my political science background was my communication skills. Written communication, we rely heavily on qualitative analysis, but that written communication can stretch across the board, upwards and across. My research skills. So, my business operations role, I actually had to conduct queries. I had to conduct in depth research to help our plant managers and our construction coordinators kind of diagnose an issue of a customer. And I also expanded my knowledge within the cable company. So I have a strong thirst for knowledge. I continue to ask questions. I continue to try to hunt for an answer that may come across my way. And those are two things that I was able to transfer from my political science background into my first IT role.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And I think it's interesting to think of how a lot of those skills that you have from like a separate background can transfer really, really well as you kind of move into an IT space. And I always kind of joke with people and I tell people pretty much IT is like customer service.
Yes, it is.
And you know, obviously definitely at the help desk like type of area or desktop support, like that's obviously support is the title, so you know people would assume that it's customer service related, but even at levels like even at in roles that I have now, or you know even probably your previous role, it's like definitely still customer service focused, just through a different lens. And so being able to kind of have that personality to communicate well, that is like an invaluable skill to have that you don't necessarily always see in a lot of people who are like true and like tried and true IT people.
And it's also asking questions and being able to communicate with the end user. So in my role, it was more of the background. So as I'm discussing with a plant manager on network infrastructure, I need to be able to relate that information
Yeah.
to a sales rep or relate that information to my manager in terms that they could understand. And that's one of the key things that I can take away from that first role is how can I effectively communicate across the board?
Oh yeah. Definitely being able to like translate super in-depth tech um, concepts to somebody who's just an average, I'm just an average business user. That is definitely an important skill. And I think that that is transferable in any space that you're in. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that aspect of things. Um, so I guess my next question would be, knowing kind of like what you ended up doing, like, you know, with that IT role and like doing poli sci and government and that kind of thing, like, what is there anything that you wish that you would have known in college that would have helped your career path out at all?
One of the things I wish I would have known in college is kind of how to navigate through the different majors or at least explore other opportunities. When I went into college, I was closed minded. I mean, I'm first to tell you, I was very closed minded. I was focused on going to law school, and that was it. There were opportunities that came across my way that I shut down because it didn't fall within the path of going to law school. And looking back on that, it could have been an opportunity that could have changed the direction of course for me. Not to say that my degrees weren't worth it. It could have been something, well, hey, I didn't realize that having a STEM degree can also complement my MBA. And so it's just one of the things, if I could tell myself, my 21-year-old self, just be open minded. Really, if anything comes your way, explore it. It's not going to hurt to look into it or dive deeper into it, but always have that goal in mind. You can still have the end goal. Just know that there are other things out there that may suit your interest as well.
I think that that is an awesome piece of advice, and I totally agree. Um, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and some like they're obviously like college age now, and I honestly look at them like they're children still. And I mean, honestly, you are. So when you go to college, I mean, you're like a kid and you're making very important decisions about your future at such a young age. And I think, my sister and I, we've talked about it on other episodes, is it's really exposure. So exposure early on to a lot of different things will help kids to kind of see like, okay, maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do, but I'm interested in this or I like a part of this. So I think you kind of explaining that, you were a little bit closed off. That is, I mean, important to kind of point out because I think there's probably a lot of kids that are like that you're very, focused on like whatever it is that you have in mind. And then you're not open to those experiences that you might be able to gain from exposure otherwise. And so I know for me, I had initially gone to college and I was like, I want to do finance. And I used to be like, I want to be like an investment banker. And even though there were people like, older people that would be like, I don't know, girl, those people don't sleep. And I used to be like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So I was also kind of closed minded until I got there and I kind of looked at, the kind of life. So that whole lifestyle that you have in college, I was really like, this is not the lifestyle for me. And so I need to pick. So I think just, yeah, definitely being open or having kids that are kind of open to that change, that's definitely important. Perfect. So okay, so I was also going to ask you, I know that you're in a new role now, which we can, get there as well later on throughout the interview. But I wanted to kind of ask you about your previous role. So you did tell us about your first role in IT, but could you just give us a little bit of background about your first role in IT that kind of brought you to meet me? And what are some things that you liked about that role?
For my first role or my previous role?
Your role for the sales training
Got
group.
it. Got it. Got it. So one of the fun things that has brought me to this spot that I'm in today is in the telecommunications field. My end users were sales, so that did not change. I understood the lingo. I understood the flow. That didn't change. My previous role in sales training, my business partners were the learning strategists who creates the curriculum for the sales trainers to train sales reps. So my college professor job came into play there because I
Okay.
create the curriculum for my college students and I understand those learning objectives and learning strategies. Now, what the IT piece from that is asking the questions, just diving a little deeper into the and data analysis. My previous role, I did rely very heavily on data analysis. I did run through reports for requests for residential areas. So I had to kind of canvas the landscape and understand quantitative analysis, but my degree, my background is in qualitative analysis. So kind of speaking that lingo with my business partners from an IT stance, and that communication was what was able to bring me into where I am today. And knowing that I'm in a learning operations space. So that was something that was a bit different than what I was used to, because I had to put on my professor hat. I have to remember my professor hat as, if I was a professor and I'm looking at a technology solution, what would I be looking for? Would it be something that is capable for offline learning, online learning? Is it something that I need for messaging? What does that end piece look like? And that is something that I can carry with me throughout, not only from my first role, but also in my current role. It's just really asking a lot of questions. And if I don't know an answer to an IT piece, I know how to reach out to someone to say, hey, can you explain this to me a bit further? And I can relay that back to my business partners. And then also developing that close relationship. In my previous IT role, I built a trust, a partnership.
Yeah.
Say that if I can give you advice from the IT side, from what I've seen, to say this network infrastructure is going to fail because there are too many people that are within a certain node for services, it's going to cause a collapse. How can I relay that sort of back to my end users as well? And just building that trust and knowing my customers, but also knowing that data analysis part was key in my previous role.
Nice. And so we kind of mentioned it before that you've now transitioned into a new role in marketing. And so I'm curious, um, you have a lot of different experiences throughout your career.
Mhm.
And I think that's amazing just because you can kind of see all those experiences kind of come to a head and you can kind of see like where all the intersectionality comes to play. And so what I'm curious about is how do you think your experiences from all these different areas have supported you and helped you to transition into this new space that you're in now?
So learning agility, that is key. I have I learn things very quickly. I'm a hands-on learner. I like to take something apart and learn that way. Learning agility was key in this role because from day one, I had to hit the ground running and hit the ground running hard. I needed to keep up because the speed, the rate at which we're going, the bus is not going to slow down. My previous role, my previous IT role, everything was fast paced. The sales environment is constantly changing. I need to keep up or stay ahead in order to not fall behind. And in this new role, that's kind of what I've seen is my IT experience has very well equipped me to succeed in this role because I ask the questions. I can pick up a new platform, a new system very quickly. And not only that, my colleagues and my supervisor are realizing that IT skill set is valuable. They appreciate that background. And I'm finding myself getting pulled into IT conversations for opinions.
You
Or
can never leave us.
I know they're wanting my opinions on certain tools, system platforms, or even processes. I mean, in IT, we follow a lot of processes and we implement those processes. We help create them, and that's really what they are looking for in my new space, and how I can work. I'm global as well as US, how I can work across the various marketing teams to achieve their needs.
That's really nice. I think what's interesting, and it differs from person to person as I talk to them, kind of like how companies decide to split up IT roles, like very just this is IT versus this is in the business. And then it's interesting to kind of see how some business teams try to still bring in that IT element so that they have that in-house on their team, and kind of
Mhm.
just seeing how that works, and kind of how you bring that different perspective to the team without actually being in, an IT department. So that's definitely interesting. And I think that that's for sure probably what your team is trying to do. So that's awesome. Um, so I want to also just ask, because this channel is definitely, we love to highlight the brown girl experience. So I wanted to also ask, you've had all these unique experiences um, from different areas and that kind of thing. But what are some unique challenges um, that you faced in your field, just being a Black woman?
In my previous sales training field, some of the challenge I faced are getting my voice heard. I mean, we're here, we want to be heard. That is a huge challenge that I face. And knowing that my opinions are valuable. I may know the subject or I may be an expert on the subject, but those that are sitting around the table that are making decisions view it as invaluable, and I have to get backing from several individuals in order for my opinions, in order for my advice to be heard, which that's kind of sad to say. Here we are in 2020, but it is a true challenge. I mean, you're constantly getting drowned by a male dominated field. By they're looking for someone that's just like them in some way, shape, or form that can possibly side with them or that can relate to them. And it's difficult as a Black female. It's difficult because we look for those that may be similar to us to help us kind of pull us through. And that's one of the biggest challenges I would say I face is just really getting my voice heard. In my political science field, I would honestly say it is I've entered the game at a disadvantage because I didn't have connections. You hear all the time
Oh,
about what you know, it's who you know. And that is very true, especially when there's some families that have connections and they place their children in certain fields.
yeah.
So buying in for internships, buying in for jobs that you know you're qualified for, you need those connections.
Oh, wow. I think that's an interesting thing that you kind of highlighted, that they're like a little bit different for both of the fields. But I
Mhm.
think honestly, the the connections also help. I think even from like an IT perspective, that think that also helps. And in a previous episode, we kind of highlighted, mentors, and like really, encouraging younger kids to kind of find a mentor. And one of our previous guests was like, she had a mentor, she attached herself to this to this lady. And that is maybe what I would also say is you're correct. Having those connections, that networking, all that, that is very, very important. I think across any field, especially like, as Black people. And I feel like having that mentor, having like somebody to kind of guide you, that would help a lot with connections. And so that's a great takeaway for anybody watching. Connections, 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 network, 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 find a
Yes.
mentor. And our details will be below. I'm sure that Pri wouldn't mind sharing hers as well. But like, as always, kind of reach out to any of the people that you see on this channel. If you see somebody who has a career path that interests you, or you see somebody who's kind of done something that you would also like to do, reach out. That's kind of what we're here for. And I just want to say thank you so much to my friend Pree. I definitely learned a lot about you, because you can be friends with somebody, but then like not necessarily know, all the different aspects of their, career journey. And so I really do appreciate you sharing that stuff with us today. Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me. I have enjoyed it, and I hope that my message is able to reach someone. And of course, if anyone ever has any question, they can always get with you, and they can ask me in some way, shape, or form.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. If you are a poli-sci major, but you might be interested in IT, drop us a comment below. Or if you, have like an obscure background that led you into a STEM field, comment below so we can talk about it. All right, guys. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.